Okay, welcome to another session of Revit, and what we're going to use for the next few sessions is to recreate an existing building. We decided to use the MaisonBordeaux by Kem Kuhas, and this building was originally designed for a person who was involved in a car accident. So everything was been designed for accessibility, and the architect used both classical theories in terms of service and served spaces, but also used modern contemporary forms of construction. And the reason we're using this building is it's got some very interesting forms that we could recreate in Revit, as well as the topography, which is it's on a sloping site, so we're able to use Revit to reproduce that as well. So if I go to Revit, this is the model. This is at a base level, so eventually we're going to develop the model from doing an initial floor plan, and then as we're throughout the weeks we're going to develop the building to add more detail and including materials, textures and topography. So today's session, following on from the lecture, is to recreate a floor plan. Now we're going to recreate the ground floor, the basement level floor plan, and because it's got some interesting geometries of the floor. We're also going to learn how to do stairs as well, and eventually we're going to present the floor plan in a architectural form in terms of the drawing, and using different line weights, field regions and patterns and hatches to recreate the floor of the house. So in today's session in this session we're going to learn how to do levels, grid lines and import DWGs. So first of all, download the Revit file which will be available on Moodle, called MaisonBordeaux the base, and because this has got all the tools that you need and components that you need for recreating the house. So first of all, the first thing we're going to learn to do is to follow on from last week is recreate the levels. So initially you just got two levels. We're going to need to recreate another two, so that will be based on 1, 2. So as we just roughly do it, because as you know, you can, if you select it, you can amend it afterwards. So the levels are set at 3 150 above each other, 3 150 and 3 150, and we're going to rename it so it's numerical. So the first one, I'm going to put 000, that's base, because the way basement level, because the way the project browser works is it does it numerically or alphabetically. So then we go just 00, it should put the ground floor below that, and then if we go numerically again, 01 dash first. Yes, and always say respond to corresponding view, and the final one will be the roof. So that'll be the roof level. Would you like to rename corresponding? Always click yes, because all that means is it renames it in the floor plans in the project browser and everything corresponding to that view. So once we've recreated the floor plans, we've recreated the levels, we need to go back to, we're going to first start off and recreate the basement plan. So grid lines are used in the construction industry as a referencing tool. So when you want to identify an element, for example, if I just go back to our model, so if I want to identify a wall, for example this one here highlighted in blue, the way you locate it is by translating it by a grid line, so by describing it by a grid line. So at the moment, because it's drawn on grid line B, you say it's that wall on grid line B, and everyone understands where that wall is. And you can either say, oh, if it's just this within this area, you say on grid line B between grid line 2 and grid line 4. And grid lines usually run numerically and alphabetically in one direction and numerically in the other. Doesn't matter which, but it's just a form of construction, convention, should I say. So going back to our drawing. Now to recreate grid lines, you click architecture, and then we click grid lines, and you can have straight, curved, etc. But all our grid lines are going to be straight. So if I left click, drag up, and we can roughly do a series of grid lines, and just click, 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 click. So the first one will be grid line 1, and that will be 3.225 millimeters. So we're going to need to highlight this with the dimension tool. So if we go to annotate, and we're going to do what's called a running dimension, so we're going to connect all the dimension lines up, because in Revit dimension lines move elements. So we go to annotate, we click to aligned, and then we click each of those grid lines, and you can see that those grid lines are the dimensions are highlighted. Once you're completed, just a left click again, and then press escape a couple of times, and you've got the dimensions. Now we want to amend those grid lines. So if I select the line that I want to move, so if you want to move an element, you select it, and the dimensions change from black to a light blue, which stipulate that you can amend that dimension. So that we're going to change that to 3250, and if I want to move that element, I select it, it turns to a light blue, which you can't quite see on the screen. Again, that will be 3250. The next one will be 6500, and this one will be 4650. I need another couple more grid lines. So again, we go to architecture, grid line, left click, drag up, and left click, drag up. So to add that dimension, which is a string of dimensions, we can click edit witness line, and that enables you to add further dimensions to that rolling dimension. So if I select that grid line now and I click it, and that will be 3850, and the last one will be 3250. So afterwards you can align them. So if I select one, the dashed line means that they're all aligned. So if I move one, it moves all of them. And if I hover up to 3, the dashed line again comes, highlights it to that 3, and it connects it to it. To rename them, these are going to be numerical. So if that one's renamed as 1, if I select that one and I call it 2, it won't enable me to do it because there's already a 2 there. So I'm going to just call that 71, 671. So oops, just 1. So because it's you can't duplicate names. So now if I click that one there, I'll call that 21 because I know there isn't a 21 there. So these all now if I go back to renaming that to 2, it enables you to do it to 2. So that's 3, click that 4, 5, 6 and 7. So once we've created those 7, we want to make some horizontal ones, grid lines. So again, grid lines, we're just doing roughly first. Left click, left click, left click, left click again, left click, left click, left click, and keep on going. And the first one I call that one A this time, so that's our fixed point. Now number 9, I'm going to change that to B. Now that distance between the two, so go back to creating a string of dimensions, so we go to annotate, align, and select each of those grid lines. And again, if we select that line, that's going to be 5500, and that one there, and change that one to C, and this time this should be 13500. See, it's jumped all the way down to there. I can just drag the other two, so it's in a sequence, and that will call that one D. That one will be, oops, I'll drag that further down, so that one will be 4A50. Sorry, that will be 5, oops, I'll select it, that should be 5000, and this one here should be, select it, should be 4A50, and I'm missing one more grid line, so I go to architecture, click on grid line, left click, drag out, and select the string of dimensions, so I want to add that as part of that group. Click edit witness line, select it, and it adds it to it, and click 1150, and then if I can drag all these down, drag them all down, and the dashed line means it's going to link it to the others. And if I wanted to add so first of all I'll just change that one to D. Again, I can't call that one D E yet because it's called E, and that one's called F. Okay, and we're just going to make that all nice and neat and line them all up. So that's all your grid lines. If I want to show the grid line, the reference, if you select the grid line, that little tick box, if you tick it, it will highlight, give you a grid bubble with the numerical with the reference onto it. So once you've created that grid line, the grid, you need to import DWGs. So if I go to insert and I select, there's two types of linking in DWGs. One which is in this group, which means linked. So what that means is if you make any amendments to the DWG, it will update it in next time you open up Revit. These category here, which just says import, they're static images or DWG. So if you import it and you update that DWG, it won't amend it, it remains static. So we're going to use these ones here. So we're going to use link CAD, and download the Maison floor plan basement 00 from Moodle, and it gives you a couple of options down here. But first of all, it says colours. So you might get DWGs with different colours in them, and the colours symbolise different line weights. If you want to import all those colours within Revit, it makes life a little bit difficult because yellows on a white background makes it quite difficult to view. So Revit offers a function of reverting all those coloured into black and white. So you can click black and white, or if you prefer to keep those colours, you can click preserve. The others are layers and levels. So in a DWG you might have layers switched off. If you want them to remain switched off when you import that DWG, you click visible. Otherwise, if you want to switch on all the layers which have been switched off in the DWG, you can click all. And the other one is, if you're not sure about the the units of the drawing, you can click Auto Detect, or sorry, you can select one of the units here, but we know it's the units are correct, so click Auto Correct, click Open, and your DWG should be imported. Now it's not in the correct position because we want to align it to the grid line that we've just created. So if I select it and I just try to start moving it, it won't enable you because it's what's called pin down. Anytime you import a DWG, it will pin it down automatically. So to let it go loose again, you select the DWG and you just select that little pin tool and it unpins it. Now it enables you to freely move it around. So the way this is building, the DWG is set up, is to the center lines of the walls. So what we want to do is center the wall to the center of the grid line to the center of the wall. So we're going to use the move tool. So if I select the DWG, up on the modify these are the modify tools. Now if we click move, and because it's a vector, it picks up the line. So if we pick up a line and select it, it aligns it to it. Now that wall is 300, so we want to move it now by a dimension. So if I select it and click move, and I select the DWG and type in this time 150, it moves it down 150 mil. Now if we do the same process for doing the vertical, so if I select it, hover around it, if I drag it, it will snap to the grid line, but I would like to move it 150. So if I select it now, click move, select the DWG and then go into the direction, but this time type in a dimension, so 150, and if we go to annotate now and we use the line tool, that dimension there is 150 and then that dimension there is 150. So now I know that that DWG is in the correct position. If I select it and click the pin tool now if I select it and try to move it, it remains in the same place. So that's it for this session. So we learnt how to import the DWG, create line weights and create the levels.